Chapter 14. Flight of the Raptor. Jakku. Bellator City. The doors of the elevator opened, the main hub of the city came into view, and Finn and Ray were already getting shot at. Red and blue and green blaster bolts are being shredded from every direction as an ear-splitting alarm blared in the background. Far ahead, the various terraces turned to pitched battle as shuttles of stormtrooper reinforcements arrived en masse like vultures to a carcass. No doubt, a reaction to a Jedi being found.
Attention! Attention!
The tired voice of Zubio echoed from the intercom system.
Stormtroopers have entered the city. Stay in your homes and arm yourselves. All militia, remove at your rendezvous points and prepare to engage the enemy.
His voice was lost over the roar of the battle. Fire teams of stormtroopers were engaging in street skirmishes with militia and denizens, slowly squeezing a perimeter around the bridge section. If she and Finn didn't break out soon, they wouldn't be getting off-world alive.
Get down!
Finn tackled Ray into the deck as bolts singed past them. Shopkeepers and the others were on one side, flipping tables and other pieces of cover over as they shot wildly at the stormtroopers advancing up the street. Finn got ready to engage them, but Ray grabbed his hand and reached out with the other. In an instant, they were pulled across the ground to a pole across the way she'd used as an anchor point, and from there, they ran for their lives. The world went ablaze with fire and death, and Ray kept her senses forward, and there sensed the enemy approaching. She ignited her saber, Finn readied his rifle, and they turned the corner to run straight into a fire team of stormtroopers and Navy troopers. She was quicker on the draw, hitting them with a force push that sent many of them flying. The others took cover, but Ray and Finn charged them. As she deflected their shots, Finn swiftly dropped them with stun bolts. Behind them, more teams were coming up the street, a heavy blaster cannon opening up on them as they began running through homes, shops, and dispensers. Ahead, Ray saw her opening, pointing up to the incoming scrap archway. "Finn!" she cried.
Got it!
And he began shooting it until it cracked and crumbled. As it did, Ray grabbed Finn and zipped past the falling sheet metal as it collapsed to the street with a loud crash.
"It won't hold them for long."
Long enough. Come on!
Then they heard it. A loud shriek zooming overhead, followed by a rain of explosions. Above, a TIE Punisher bomber was coming about, arming its next payload as the sight of them came screaming in.
Run!
A pod opened, and micro-munitions began chasing them as they disappeared into a marketplace. The cover was meager, but the Punisher soon zoomed away, dropping a few more explosives behind it as it disappeared from the battlefield.
Punisher blue to all ground forces. The nations are dry. I'm making a supply run. 2-5 to 1-3. We are taking fire from the roof. 2-1. Keep your head down. I'm making it. This is 3-1. We've lost contact with the objective. We need eyes on target. Over. 1-1. We are approaching from the north. ETA 2 mics.
From his commanding position within the control room of the Star Destroyer, Hux's face contorted into a stony expression as he took on the ongoing battle. Images of various feeds filtered around the holographic projector, focusing in on the most important actions. To most, it was disorienting, but to the veteran admiral, it was surprisingly calming.
1-1, this is Ravager.
A coordinating deck officer called on the feed.
Hold your position. We have a large number of contacts coming your way. 15 yards out and closing.
Punisher red to Ravager. I'm approaching the combat zone. ETA 30 seconds. Requesting target package. Over. This is 3-1. We've reacquired the target. Requesting feed display on their movements. Over.
As a new overhead screenshot zoomed in on the western section of the outpost, the air suddenly chilled. Hux turned, and Kylo Ren entered the control room. He abruptly stopped and stared right at the feed.
"Admiral, can you provide a clearer image on the targets?"
Hux bellowed an order, and a technician began zooming in on the battlefield. Slowly, Kylo approached the holographic table, his hands clasping the edges as he stared at the Jedi and the traitor, FN 2187. Closing in fast was the four-man fire team 3-1, firing rounds at them as they ran.
3-1, this is 3-2. We are approaching from your 9 o'clock. Ravager, we request feed on targets to coordinate with 3-1. Over.
Roger 3-2. Feed is being...
Pull them back.
Everybody stopped and turned to stare at the Lord of Ren, who turned to Hux and commanded in a grave tone.
"Admiral, pull your teams back."
"Son, we can handle a lone Jedi."
"Not this one. If your men continues to chase them, she'll kill them. Pull them back now."
Huck stared long and hard in the obsidian visor of Kylo's helm, somehow seeing his eyes beneath. Begrudgingly, he nodded and pointed to an operator.
3-1, 3-2, disengage from target and maintain slight line distance. Acknowledge, over.
Roger, disengaging, over.
As the troopers slowed, the pair of them disappeared into a half block beneath the hangar line.
Thank you, Admiral. Tell the flight crews to prepare my shuttle. I will deal with this personally.
However, before he could even get a foot past the blast door, one of the flight personnel gestured over to the XO, who in turn gestured to the Admiral.
Sir, call sign designated Inferno 2 is requesting permission to join the battle. She's in Hangar 1.
Inferno 2?
Huck smiled.
Captain Phasma. Ensign, signal traffic controllers to authorize her flight. It's time for her to go hunting.
She should have been on the ground. She had insisted on the matter, but the Admiral pointed out that her judgment would be affected by her own personal motivations. The capture of the traitor FN-2187 and his compatriots was a task best given to the platoon commanders on the ground. There was truth in those words, Phasma knew, but there was an unspoken truth between them, a decade-long buried secret. FN-2187 was not the first renegade stormtrooper in their history, nor was he even the most severe. A decade ago, rebellion on a much larger scale nearly tore the First Order in half.
Captain, your flight has been authorized. The Admiral says, good hunting.
Thank you, Flight Control. Beginning takeoff procedures now.
A decade ago, she had lost so many of her children. She had lost a friend, a brother.
Cardinal.
She caught herself whispering, and she shook her head. She would not allow history to repeat itself. She pushed the throttle down, the Defender roaring out of the hangar with subsonic speed towards the planet. A strange familiarity hit her, edged with both guilt and joy. It had been a very long time since she had flown a fighter craft, but it felt almost like yesterday when she was operating with a squadron of commandos. She keyed her mic.
Ground units, this is Inferno 2. I am approaching the target area. Requesting update on combat stream. Over.
A bolt nearly took off Finn's head.
Hunter fire! It's just us.
Sorry, whole lot of shooting out there. What's going on? Quick updates were made as they boarded the Raptor while Poe slipped into the cockpit and Ray inserted the flight control module. There was a sudden explosion as the hangar door was caved in as stormtroopers swarmed in.
Finn, gun position, now! Ray, co-pilot, strap in. I'm taking us out of here.
Normally, he would have done a checklist and have Ray do a once-over the engine, but he had no time. He began flipping switches and activated the Kickstarter, just as crimson bolts started bouncing off the cockpit. A few moments later, the Raptor roared like a caged Vactrol as its thrusters kicked on. The wings flared out, the craft levitating off the ground as Poe struggled to turn it about and up to go through the roof.
Damn, this thing is sensitive!
Poe exclaimed as he fought with the strange controls. It wasn't just a joystick on a control panel, but instead a pair built into his chair with foot panels at the bottom. Poe had flown hundreds of ships, but never quite like this. Even a slight jerk of his wrist caused the ship to veer up and over, the hull scraping against the walls and deck plate painfully.
Don't you dare hurt my baby!
Hey, tell your baby to walk with.
Now the stormtroopers were bringing up heavy repeaters. The cockpit's duraglass starting to buckle in the way of the plasma.
Ray, shields!
Got it!
Across the way, Finn was running through the halls and grabbing onto the sides as the ship rocked like a drunkard. He made his way down to the gunner position, hitting a release catch on the door and climbing down to strap himself in. Lights flickered as the bubble turret hissed and then suddenly slid downward from within the ship. The hatch sealed him in, the pressure changed, and Finn felt dizzy. He guessed the turret had its own gravity, confirmed as he was flipped upside down, but he felt right side up. Ahead, the hangar and his brother shooting at them came into view.
Finn, get those bucketheads off my back!
Poe's voice echoed from a headset which he quickly put on. Gun controls sprang forward, and fortunately these looked like they had been taken straight from a TIE variant. A pair of laser cannons unfolded in front of him, and now he had his own cannon's gun sights. Finn grumbled darkly. He had sworn he would not kill his own, and now fate or the Force or whatever it was testing that promise. He aimed above them, firing into the docking bay's metal superstructure itself. Stone, dirt, and blasted metal came showering down and forcing the troopers into cover. At the cockpit, alarms rang out every few seconds, and Ray was constantly putting out panel fires, or tightening pump lines as steam shot out. Ahead, Poe was cursing like a madman as he attempted to balance simple movements with the most precise hand gestures. Blast it! Want to learn how to swim? Jump in. The Raptor shot up, tearing straight through the Duraglass ceiling as it roared with the wind and came out above the raging battlefield. Finally, some elbow room! Now Poe swung the craft around, taking the necessary time to get a hang of the complicated controls. He didn't want to be merely flailing about once they hit Admiral and they had to make their escape. The radio crackled suddenly as it picked up the local channel, and Zubia's voice came out on the line.
Combat teams on deck 7 and 8, all back and defend the power station. Engineering teams, get the weapon systems online.
Ray's eyes widened.
The power grid's never been tested like that. Zubi might just blow the whole ship doing that.
But if they don't, it's gonna be a Dreadnought's level of firepower up here. I don't want to be around when that happens. The First Order seemed to have the exact same idea. Ahead, a returning squadron of bombers came screaming back into the fray. One group split off from the rest and turned their ordnance upon where the central power grid was stationed. Bombs peppered the already ruined decks, and Poe could see pure pain on Ray's face. Then she became stricken as the second group's objective became clear. In a mere moment, a TIE Punisher let off a flurry of missiles, the red arcing projectiles flashing out like witch fire as they struck the branch. Zubi had been in mid-announcement when it happened, and the radio signal went dead.
No. Oh, Force, no.
Poe seethed in anger at the sight. He keyed his mic as he growled. "Fen, forgive me, buddy, but this has gone on long enough." Weapon systems went online, and Poe swung them in. Laser cannons roared as he dove straight into the arriving transports, detonating them with fiery explosions as he then raked the decks with blaster fire. An avalanche of crimson rained down the attacking stormtroopers. Many of them turned to char and ash as the rest were driven deeper into the Dreadnought City. Above, the bombers were turning about, and Poe went straight at them. Clouds of missiles were fired out, and Poe began spinning his craft like a cyclone as he returned fire. The Raptor shield sparkled and flared with the damage as Poe took them right through the midst. Flares fired out as he went, the Emerald craft blazing like a rocket as Poe tore into the first lane of the bombers, and blasted away two of them. The burning craft plummeted to the deck in a plume of smoke, one crew having the time to eject and deploy their parachutes. The others did not. Mata. Poe swung around to pursue the remaining bomber craft. His hand flicked up the safety pins on his controls, bringing his own missiles to bear. A sonic boom erupted as the Raptor went Mach speed, zipping through the slower-moving bomber craft as the missile struck home. Poe tore through the fireball, the shield buckling under the pressure as behind him the bombers crashed into the dreadnought below. Now squadrons of more craft were coming for them, and Poe knew it was time to get out of Kessel. "Hang on, antagonist!" Suddenly, an emerald explosion erupted on top of them, and the Raptor swung towards the ground. "Oh, no, 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 no!" Poe yanked the controls up and tried to pull the craft upward. The Raptor collided with the ground, sliding across the sand dunes before Poe managed to bring them up.
What the hell just hit us?
Poe whipped his head around the cockpit. "I can't see him! Where is he?"
Behind us! They're behind!
A second and third explosion rocked the craft, and Poe had to fight to keep them level. A loud screech rang out, and a TIE Defender zoomed ahead and then up.
Enemy craft, ground your vessel now or I will bring you down.
Warning lights came up as half a dozen bogies suddenly appeared on his scanner. "Oh, you gotta be kidding me!" Poe dove straight for the ground, the squadron of TIE strikers closing in fast. In the Admiral's life, he had known many outstanding fighter pilots, and even decorated a few for gallantry. A part of him even wished he had become a fighter pilot rather than the captain of a Star Destroyer, but that was idle fantasy. Still, it did not diminish his fascination with the almost romantic bravery of dogfighting, and Poe Dameron himself epitomized this. It was a pity, then, that he had not been born a Coruscanti, lived to fight in his service. He hated to kill such good men, but it was necessary, and the captain would follow her duty to the letter.
I repeat, ground your vessel or I will do it for you. This is your final warning.
Dameron's response was expected, and the Admiral would have been disappointed if it hadn't been so.
Come and try, ma'am.
And with that, Dameron plunged his ship into a nosedive, the captain close behind as the strikers moved like hounds to flank him. Dameron swung left and right as emerald bolts bounced off their shields, returning fire coming out from a bow turret as the strikers closed in, their cannons raking across his hull. On command, they could ram the fugitives and bring them down, but that risked destroying any traces of the map. Hux admitted it presented a tactical disadvantage, and Dameron took full advantage of it. He swung his vessel sideways, the belly of the vessel pointing right to the flanking strikers. Within seconds, the bow guns brought down the lead striker followed by the second, the flaming debris tearing into the rest of the formation. The Admiral smiled at this.
Very good, Poe Dameron. Now, what would you do next?
His answer came when he swung left, swiping the lead striker with his shielded wing. The striker's wing was seared through, Its body dragged along until it crashed into a high-rising dune.
Very good.
Already they were learning something, and no doubt his analysts would work to improve the flight programming of their droid fighters. Hux grumbled at this. No droid was the true substitute for a skilled organic pilot, but the Admiral was nothing if not pragmatic. Better they lose 100 droids rather than even a single pilot.
Sir,
The helmsman reported.
our ground teams are reporting heavy resistance from the second.
He held up a hand to his mic and his face paled.
Our sensors are detecting a massive energy buildup from its weapon systems.
Without word, the visual feed switched to an overhead view of the maroon dreadnought. The skies filled to the brim with the black forms of their spacecraft circling the airspace. Then the lights dotting the lines of the ship bow suddenly turned a bright emerald, the power lines fluctuating and sparking from the sudden surge of power overtaking them. However, they did not combust as expected, and a perilous span of moments followed as both sides waited to see what would happen next. It was broken by the sight of the aged and decrepit weapon systems moving with a grind of sand and metal. Gun turrets from turbolasers to point defense weapons turned their barrels upward, towards the crowded sky.
Get our spacecraft out of there! Now!
Captain Kennedy shouted, and a recall order was swiftly sent. However, the seconds it took to reach the pilots and droids below were seconds too slow. For a moment, the air was still, and then it was turned asunder by the combined firepowers of hundreds of guns firing at once. The feed blared blindly green for several seconds, shifting out of focus to reveal a cascade of plasma marking the world of explosions and the trailing plumes of falling spacecraft. The power lines of the ship buckled, a station flashed with the internal rupture, and a section of the guns went offline, but the rest were more than enough. Hux asked for a status report, learning that while the majority of their piloted craft and shells were able to escape by flying below the depression line of the ship's weapons and landing on its outskirts, their droid fires had all been shot down.
How the blazes did they manage to man all those weapon systems? That ship needs a crew of thousands.
I doubt they did. I suspect they must have a slave circuit network installed to remotely control their weapons from a series of command centers.
Impressive. Sir, if we try to take the city by force, we're going to suffer heavy casualties. An orbital bombardment would make short work of it, but it seems like a waste to destroy a ship that could be brought back into service.
I agree, and our objective is no longer there anymore. Lieutenant, send a withdrawal order down to our forces on the ground. We will deal with the Bellator later when we apprehended the fugitives.
Yes, sir.
The comms officer said. Hux's eyes turned back to the chase. Dameron now had entered what the natives called the Graveyard of Giants, and the Admiral felt a sudden chill in his bones. Amongst the scarlet sands, he recognized many of the ships entombed there, and now the New Republic pilot was using them for cover. He swung amidst the ruins of corvettes and frigates, flying through the shattered remains of cruisers as the strikers doggedly chased him through the maze of metal. Phasma, however, was perched high above, waiting like a perching swoop hawk for her moment to strike. Hux smiled at the sight.
Good girl. You haven't lost your touch.
Below, Dameron swiftly outmaneuvered and destroyed his pursuers, using a long trench formed by the spine of a Star Destroyer to slow the droids and force them ahead of him. Then, as they appeared in front, he swiftly destroyed the first, the other taking evasive action as it dove down. All Dameron did was pull back the throttle, hover a moment, and then blast the striker to atoms when it came in range.
Impressive.
The Admiral replied, just as Phasma struck. She moved in right on top of the Emerald craft, showering with fire at close range where Dameron could not easily retaliate. He swung above, zipping past the attuned ranks of medical frigates as he tried to shake her above. The captain, however, stayed right on top of him, mirroring his movements while slowing only to avoid incoming debris and get back on his tail. Then he swung a hard left, the captain zipping past him, and now Dameron was on her tail. He unleashed a barrage of blaster and missile fire. Phasma forced a fire of a torrent of flares to divert the rest. From there, she slowed her inertia, now using the falling ships as cover as she flew into the ruptured Moncala and bobbed a delicate dance amongst its support structures. Dameron, however, flew right and out, trying to get clear of the graveyard and force the captain out in the open. Phasma, to her credit, did not immediately attempt to pursue, instead flying about and accelerating higher into the sky.
What was the ETA on the striker squadron?
ETA 3 minutes, sir.
Just then, Phasma came screaming out of the graveyard, all her weapons firing as she tore straight at the fugitives. Dameron replied by going straight at her, his own weapons firing as they whipped past each other and circled about, performing the dance of death again and again as they moved in figure eights across the desert. Hux knew, however, that her TIE Defender simply did not possess the same firepower and shielding as her opponent, and she was going to lose out eventually. Kylo must have guessed this too, as he tapped into her frequency.
Captain, this is Lord Kylo. There is a weakness in the ship's superstructure. With the shields weakened, you should be able to hit it with an ion torpedo. It will disable their engines and bring the ship down. Over.
Understood, my lord. Send me the target package. Over.
It happened without warning. The targeting appears screamed as yet another missile came at them. This one was fired at close range, just as the pursuer slipped past them. Poe tried to swerve away, but it was too late. The torpedo struck, and everything flared of electricity before going dead.
She's fried us!
The Raptor flew another dozen or so feet, was held momentarily in the air, and then started falling back to the earth. The vessel spun nosewise, and Poe knew he had about 20 seconds before they hit the ground. Right? But she was already out of her seat. The Raptor turned long ways, nose pointed up to the sky, and Ray stood over on the back of her chair with her arms crossed. In a moment, she leapt down as the doors opened.
BB?
And there was the droid below. He flew up to catch her, Ray holding out her hands as she grabbed onto his head. The droid's head locked in place, allowing her to spin about like a trapeze artist and flip into a somersault before flying straight down into the engine room. Ray stretched out her hand, using the force to cushion her landing as her feet hit the wall and her hands tore into the engine plating.
15 seconds.
She thought and gritted her teeth. But with force, she called a hand a few select tools and ripped open the covering to the main fuse line of the ship's power core. Everything was fried and burning, sparking with discharging electricity.
12 seconds.
As she plugged an extinguisher and cooled off the hotter parts, she worked through the melted coils, finding that the main connect line, too, was too fried, but the connector itself was not. She had to redivert power from the auxiliary line.
8 seconds.
With gritted teeth, she plugged the switchblade between the connector and pulled the main line away.
6 seconds.
The auxiliary line was fighting her. The ship was tumbling over and over and the line was flying out of her reach. She pulled it back with a force and tried to force the two lines together.
3 seconds.
The connector didn't fit right as she had to pull them apart again. She then pushed the two lines together and electricity flared as auxiliary power kicked on.
Poe, now!
With a second to spare and 20 feet of clearance, Poe pulled hard on his throttle. The Raptor swerved up, skidding the ground and leaving a long scar along the ship's bow. Poe checked his instruments as they flew, and his heart sank. His shields were gone.
Oh, we can't try flying out of here with the captain on our tail. She'll only shoot us down again.
Poe bit his lip and cursed. He was right. They would either need to shake her or better yet, disable her. But how? Ray, get up here. I've got a... Suddenly an emerald bolt shot across their bow and made their ship buckle. Report! Is everybody okay?
I'm alright.
Ray called as she came back into the cockpit with BB-8 in tow.
It felt like it came from down below.
Finn, are you alright? There was a momentary silence before Finn replied.
She hit the turret. I'm stuck in a forward-facing position. I cannot move.
Not a problem, buddy. I've got a plan.
Plan? What plan?
He pointed ahead. That plan. Ray's mouth dropped as the finalizer came into view, and Poe was flying them straight into the open tear along the bow of its hull.
No.
Yes.
No!
Yes! And he pushed the throttle to the metal. The Raptor took off like a thunderbolt, slipping straight through the fatal wound of the finalizer. The walls quickly closed in around them as they flew through the engine compartments, flight decks, and service centers. More than once, Poe jerked a little too hard on the controls, and the Raptors would scrape the sides of the cracked scrapped metal. Give me a little more, gal. Just a little more.
She's behind us.
And they were taking fire from their rear. The Raptor now flew past the hangar bays, Poe flying under the beams and over fusion lines. Left, right, top and bottom he swung. Then the path narrowed again, but Poe saw an opening to his right. It would be tight, but it was their only chance. Now his computers blared out a lock-on sequence, the light ahead coming closer and closer until... Now! Poe shied as he pulled hard on his braking shaft, cutting out the engines on one side and causing him to swing hard right. He then kicked out the engines, his repulsors keeping them from slamming into the wall, and he was firing straight through the hole in seconds. The desert appeared below, and Poe took them skyward. Like a bat out of hell, Phasma was right behind them, but she had to swing wide. Once he was at the right angle, Poe shut off his engine and the Raptor began tumbling over. Phasma appeared above them, suspended for a few seconds, and Finn fired. The bolt sheared the defender's wing clean off and sent her plummeting to the bottom. Nice shot, buddy! Poe called out as he flicked on his engines, the thrusters roaring to life and shooting them spaceward with a sonic boom echoing in their wake. In a few seconds, he was clearing Atmo. In a minute, he was in vacuum. Ahead, the Ravager stood poised, and hundreds of strikers were flying out of its hangars like swarms of angry locusts. BB-8, get the Hyperdrive coordinates ready, Poe called, turning his eyes away for a moment.
Poe?
He suddenly heard, and he turned up, his eyes going wide. His mother's face was staring at him from just a few feet away. She was weary, grief-stricken, her eyes orbs of pure pain as her flesh turned brittle as paper. She reached out to him, whispering softly.
Oh, please, come back to me.
Then he felt a hand on his shoulder. Ray was looking at him intently, her eyes narrowed as she extended her hand. His world suddenly turned black as pitch, him and Ray standing in the midst of a dark sea. There, he saw his mother crumble to the rotting disease that had taken her life. But she felt wrong, cold.
That is not your mother.
I know. And before him, his mother morphed into a long, menacing shadow.
You shall escape me, Poe Dameron.
Try me, Poe hissed as his eyes snapped open. BB-8, jump, now! Ahead, hundreds of crowds swarmed towards them in a dark cloud. Emerald fire spinning out for them, and then space folded around them. White shards of glass tore through reality, and the ship was flung through hyperspace. The fold in space closed behind them, and they were gone. Grand Admiral Hux grumbled at the feed, half impressed and halfway despondent.
What happened?
He asked the Lord of Ren, who stared wordlessly out the viewport where their prize had just been a few moments ago.
She helped him see through my vision.
Who?
The Jedi.
Before the Admiral could pry further, he about-faced, disappeared down the hallway like a black velvet specter in the night.
Do we have an update on the captain?
Yes, sir. She ejected out before her vessel crashed.
Very well. Dispatch a search and recovery team. Begin calculating a possible trajectory route.
Sir, no doubt they're heading for New Republic space. We will not be able to follow them without violating the Concordance.
Any more than we already have. Get me the Crimson Corsairs, Captain.
Aye, aye, sir.
As he did this, Hux collapsed into his chair, his weary brow resting on his fingers.
This has gotten out of hand, and now we put our fates in the hand of filthy pirates. Stars help us all.